I truly believe the key to retention is humanizing what we're doing and connecting with our caregivers on a level that they feel supported. And I think that it's small, I think, but actually it's pretty big.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zengage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. Today with me on the Home Care Hindsight podcast, I have Becky Reel, founder, originator, owner, CEO, person in charge of Reel Home Care Consulting. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Becky, we, of course, know each other pretty well at this point. Before recording, I had my daughter on and was telling you about how she loves American Pie more than any other song, which is good because that's like 7.5 minutes of bliss for me right now. But for people who don't know you and aren't familiar with your work, how would you introduce yourself?
So I am a former agency owner. My agency was rated the #1 agency in North America by Home Care Pulse, now Activated Insights, but I ran an agency for 10 years, took it from not doing well and turned it around to about 300% growth year over year and successfully exited the agency last year. We sold, and now I'm helping other agencies find their voice, find their balance, and really helping them scale and get to be who they want to be in their area.
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciate about kind of you and your journey is I think owners today know that operating on this side of COVID is such a different environment than operating prior to us all being in a pandemic and figuring out what that means for life and health and labor and all that kind of stuff. But I think also you've gotten to what I think a lot of owners think of as kind of the promised land is their desired dream outcome is, okay, I've built this thing, I've made it valuable, it's been a good job, but it's been a part of my life for a long time now, and I'm ready for the next thing. How do I turn this into money and then go away? And so I think that that's like both of those pieces of your experience. I mean, it's part of why I think you've been really successful in your coaching consulting practice. And I think part of why I'm really excited for us to talk today.
Well, thank you.
As you know, my capacity for small talk ends fairly quickly. And all I ever really want to ask is like, what kind of person are you? And you can't do that in most places. I think you're one of those people that you can just get straight to the point, be like, all right, Becky, I think maybe our first conversation was along those lines, but you typically can't. I get in trouble when I do it. But on my podcast, I can kind of do whatever I want. And so in order to ask the question, what kind of person are you? I'm going to ask, what's the current obsession in your life that you talk about and that makes other people's eyes glaze over? And they just don't get why it's such a big deal to you.
Good one. I am really into music, which I think is what you and I connected on initially. I am just a huge fan of a few different bands, and that's my priority whenever they're in town. But going to live music, I think a lot of people don't necessarily get it or have that sense. I have an emotional connection with some artists. And so I do get a little obsessed, I would say, from time to time. I'm a big fan of Sister Hazel, and my daughter's name is Hazel. So, I really took it to the next level, but I don't know if everyone really understands it. But for me, it's an emotional connection that I love nothing more than being at a concert, a live music concert, just being there.
Because you and I, and the people are going to track us down and try and buy our tickets from us. We both are in the position of having Taylor Swift tickets. And I think people are like, oh yeah, it makes sense why you'd want to go to that. It's like kind of a cultural phenomenon. She's stimulated the economy everywhere she's been. But Barry Manilow, I don't know that everybody knows why you'd go to that show.
So Barry Manilow, I'm a fanalow for all of you that don't know.
Absolutely not. A fanalow. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. All right. I'm going to try and be a professional here. Becky, please. A fanalow?
A fanalow. You've never heard of it?
No.
Yeah. A long time fanalow over here. It started, my mom, I grew up with it, and my mom and I it became a thing. And so it's more of a sentimental attachment. So I took my husband to it once, and he'll never go again. Luckily, he will tell people that he's thankful that he was playing at a casino, because my husband was able to get enough drinks prior to the show to make it through the show, but he'll never go with me again. But my mom and I try to go, and it's more of a thing for us to do. And so, yeah, just he's fun and he's amazing. He's a showman. It's an experience. If you haven't seen him, you should.
I think my favorite thing in life is when things just totally catch me completely off guard. And on my bingo card of the things that I'd hear today, I'm a Fanalo, for all those who aren't familiar, was never, not anywhere close to the 5x5 grid of my bingo card. God, I love that.
I guess we're not as close as I thought we were.
I guess not. I'm just picturing that you guys are like deadheads, but that follow Barry Manilow around the country.
I'll send you some photos after this of the last time my mom and I were in Vegas seeing him. We have matching hats and biker jackets. It's a thing.
God, that's awesome. All right. This is off to an awesome start. So you are somebody that I think everybody knows has been successful, has grown a home care agency, has been recognized with rewards and awards, and people have you on your podcasts and you're like in articles and stuff. And I don't want to talk about any of that today. Instead, I bring people on my podcast to talk about the big mistakes that they've made. And so, Becky, what's your big mistake?
Well, I've made a lot, continue to make a lot. But when I look back at my home care journey, I think the biggest mistake I made that impacted my business was I decided to hire my nanny to work in my office. It was during COVID. She became our nanny. She actually worked at my kid's school and they needed a job. So she was wonderful. She was reliable. She was talkative. She was able to connect with people. And I needed somebody to help recruit caregivers. And when I was ready for my daughter to go back to school, she needed a job. And I was like, well, this could work. It worked until it didn't. And it worked until I realized what was really going on behind the scenes. So from an outside, she was very engaged and great. But once I realized what was happening, a lot of things weren't being done or said they're being done. But more than anything, it created a very toxic environment. And there were a lot of red flags that I just completely ignored, right? Because I had such a different view. And no matter how many people told me there was toxicness happening, and I ignored it for way too long.
Sounds like history with this person resulted in just having some blind spots and kind of a soft spot in your heart and just not being receptive and hearing like real concerns from the people that you worked with.
Yeah, I mean, it was person after person. This person could not get along with anybody. And I continuously thought, well, something's wrong with them. She's wonderful, right? Sure. It wasn't until I actually screenshot of a message between her and somebody else in the office that was completely inappropriate. And this person, so there was somebody under her that was reporting to her, and she quit because she used the term hostile work environment. So for any business owner, that's something you don't want to hear, right? Yeah. Legalities started, like lawyers started going off my head. And just as soon as I heard that term and then I saw the screenshots of what was happening, that was the first eye-opening moment of, oh my gosh, everybody's been right. And then I started digging and realizing that this person really wasn't even really doing their job, which created just a huge mess in the office. I also feel like I'm a very trusting person and I'm not a micromanager. I don't have the time to micromanage, right? If you say you're doing your job and I have no reason to think otherwise, I think you're doing your job.
Right. Well, and I think, one of the things I've heard you talk about and that I think was really core to your success as a business is being a really amazing place to work for caregivers, for office staff. If I'm thinking about like part of why this sticks out for you, it was a moment where your brand, your understanding of yourself and what you bring to your business was really like harmed by this particular incident.
Yeah. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not about the money. I invested back into my people, my business. My story, that I built up my business in order to sell it so my parents could retire comfortably. We sold and the money didn't go to me. It's never about the money for me. It's about the people. I'm very people over profit. And I just put everybody else before me. And I felt very taken advantage of. I felt hurt, emotion. I try not to mix business with personal feelings, but I felt very hurt and just very taken advantage of by this person that really took advantage of the fact that I am very good to my team.
Sure. So hindsight's 2020, which is kind of like the theme of this show. As you look back on that, what were the things that you could have done differently or should have seen sooner that would have helped you to avoid this situation and all its impacts?
Yeah. So when COVID was getting to the point where people were going back to work, this person was asked not to come back, was not
Mm-hmm.
welcomed back to the school.
Mm-hmm.
I thought something was wrong with the school. I
Sure.
thought, what's wrong with them? Something I like took the time to be like, I wonder in the staffing and this shortage that we're in, like there must have been something wrong that
Right.
she was not welcomed back. Instead, I blamed the school. This person also didn't really have a lot of friends and really spent a lot of time socializing with people that didn't stick around, right? And to
Sure.
me, that's a big red flag of people if they don't have a strong group or support system. I
Sure.
think that tells you something about them too. Not necessarily everybody, but you can tell a lot about people by who they associate themselves with,
Mm.
right? And I think the third big flag was watching the interaction between this person and everyone in the office. And
Yeah.
literally every single person had an issue with this person. And I just ignored it.
And I think, first of all, like sharing this is a real point of like vulnerability. Like, this isn't like your favorite day of work or anything like that. But for people listening to this who are like, yeah, I've had some messy hires in my office, the culture, the politics, the relationships between people in the office have caused problems, have caused issues that spun outside of the four walls of our office and impacted our relationships with the community and impacted our relationships with caregivers and et cetera, et cetera. What are the things that you started to do differently after you experienced this that you felt like were provided some guardrails and some supports to prevent this from taking place again in your business?
So I've always really heavily leaned on references. And I think we all understand that people put references of people that are going to say good things about them,
Sure.
right? But I looked more into the actual establishments that they worked at and making sure that I understood the length of time that somebody was there and did, right? And we did this for caregivers too. Like, I'm not going to call cell phones. I want to actually talk to the business. I want to know that I'm not talking to someone's friend who's pretending to be somebody, right?
Sure.
So it made me put a lot more thought into the references and how we're going about that. I also spent a lot more time. I kind of blew off my one-on-ones with my team, right?
Yeah.
We always talk about connecting with your office team and not just checking in, but really checking on them. So those one-on-ones were no longer for me tactical about, okay, where are you with this, but how are you? And so that way I was able to get more insight about how are you getting along with everybody else on the team? Do you feel connected? Do you feel supported? Is there any issues with anybody else internally? And like, let's address it.
Yeah.
I'm very transparent for anyone that knows me, anyone that works with me. I'm very open. So like, if there's a problem, like, let's talk about it. As opposed to, in this case, I wasn't really checking on my team. I was checking in, but I
Sure.
made more of an effort to really be there for my team in a way that
Yeah.
I wasn't before.
Yeah. Well, and what a funny tension, like in being a business owner of, okay, I've got to get out of the day to day to let you people operate at your best and create kind of the next thing for the business. But when I do that and I'm working on the business and not in the business, like everybody kind of their end state is, how do I not get so pendulum swung to the other end of that spectrum that all of a sudden I'm just checking in on the KPIs and the key metrics that I care about and losing sight of the fact that at the end of the day, this is a people business. And everybody who works in the office was hired because they're people. And that probably means when we're managing them that they need a different kind of thing than a CPA practice would.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point in my agency journey, I had the bandwidth to really be more of 300,000 overview of everybody where I wasn't doing the day-to-day stuff anymore, which I think
Yeah.
is every agency's goal to get to that point. And I just really, you want to attend to everybody's unique needs. And so that meant some people we need to get out of sometimes it's just like getting out of the office, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of the day-to-day and doing something different and doing something fun to get people to really open up. And that was something I really always prided myself on, was that people felt comfortable coming to me, whether it was a caregiver or an office staff or a client. I like to think that people felt I was approachable enough
Yeah.
to be really open about what was happening and to make sure people know, like, you're not going to get reprimanded for coming to me with something, right? I'd rather you just be really open, because this business is about life. We're dealing with people dying and people having serious medical issues, and it's heavy, right? Home care is heavy. So what can I do to lighten the load to make it less heavy? We got to laugh. We got to find similar interests. We got to be adventurous. And that was what I really tried to focus on. That's why in my last speaking opportunity when I mentioned that I gave my team after 3 years, they got to go anywhere in the world, on me as a thank you for being so reliable. Like, it's important to incentivize and reward people for the work they do. And that's just really important to me.
That's perfect. That was an obvious place for me to do an Ava commercial about how important rewards and incentives and building those into your culture is. But
I was giving that to you.
you set it up for me right then and there, and I totally failed to knock it down. Wow, it's a real missed opportunity there. But wonderful. First of all, that was all amazing, and I think exactly what I'd hoped for in our conversation. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is a segment that I call underrated or overrated, where you pick something, in your case, that's really underrated, that people in the industry tend to overlook and that owners are often not doing, and that you think's way more important than the kind of credibility that's given to it. So what do you think's underrated?
So this goes back to my need to connect with people and to humanize what we're doing as an industry or just as businesses in general. But I think we really underestimate the power of responding to online reviews, good and bad, right? So in my former career, I helped launch reviews for car dealers, right? And you can imagine that this is probably like 15, 16 years ago. Car dealers did not want transparency and they did not want people writing reviews on them. And my job was to help them understand how important this is for your business because this is the way we're moving. And again, that was like 16 years ago, right? And so look at where we're at now. But a lot of times, if it's a positive review, businesses don't think they need to respond. They're like, oh, that's a positive review. Great. But actually responding shows everybody that there's somebody behind the curtain, right? There's actually humans there that appreciate that review. Also, the negative reviews. A lot of businesses think, oh gosh, I got this bad review, I'm doomed. If you read the data, there's so much data out there to show you that bad reviews actually legitimize a company.
Sure.
Nobody wants to look at, no one trusts 5 stars, all 5 stars, nothing negative. People just do not believe that.
Yeah.
Human nature, we're just wired to think, well, that's not true.
Yep.
Those are all incentivized. But it's actually good to have a few bad reviews. But the more important thing is going in and actually responding and showing people that, hey, look, we're human. We messed up. Here's how we want to fix it for you. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm going to a restaurant or I'm looking at anything on a review, like I sort and I go straight to the bad reviews first because I want to know what I'm getting in for. But more than anything, I want to see how the owners, management, how they handle that. Because for me, that's more important. We're all going to make mistakes, but how are you handling that and fixing those mistakes? I think that is something that agencies specifically really don't value and understand how that can really impact your business.
Yeah. Give me a for instance here. Let's say I leave a review and I say, I trusted this agency to take care of my mom and we had a lot of inconsistency with no-shows and these caregivers just weren't reliable and we ended up having to go somewhere else because they just couldn't consistently staff the case. Real review that happens. That's a real experience that happens in a lot of businesses. So give me like okay, here's the wrong way to respond, and then here's the way that you would typically respond in your business.
I've actually seen the wrong way to respond is to get defensive and confrontational, hands down, right? It'd be better not to write a review, to respond at all if you're going to go that route, right? So saying like, well, your mother was a challenging client for us to staff and blaming them, like something like that, I would say like, don't do. But the way I would respond is, first of all, you apologize and you say like, we absolutely fell short of what we promised you.
Yep.
I am so incredibly sorry. And potentially, unfortunately, we fell into the world of COVID where our caregivers were falling ill. And the last thing we ever wanted to do was jeopardize your mom's health by bringing in somebody that was not healthy. So explaining, right?
Yep.
You've been to my conferences, you understand, I believe in explaining why. These people don't run home care agencies. They don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So explaining your rationale and why things happen the way they did, but then saying like, I'd love to talk to you and see if I can win back your business and make things right. Here's my contact info. Give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. Something like that, I think. But here's a really good example. I had a review and it's probably still on there if you want to go check it out. Check out my response. We had a review from a gentleman who applied to work for us and went through the process, but he had no experience at all. I'm in the belief that you don't need a lot of experience to be a great caregiver because a lot of times we're taking people, to run errands or just companionship, play games with them. So you don't need a ton of experience for the right client.
Right.
But in this gentleman's case, we didn't have the right client for him because he didn't have the right experience, but we were hoping to at some point. And before we had a chance to even have him shadow anybody or go further down our training program, he wrote us a bad review that we didn't get him work.
Yeah.
And that he believed in our mission and he felt jaded. And my response was, unfortunately, we did not have, explaining the why, we did not have the right client for you based on the limited experience you had. We're sorry we fell short, but here's why we did not place you with somebody. And so from a client's point of view, what that is doing is showing our potential client or employee is showing that we actually cared how we placed people. We weren't just throwing bodies around for the sake of filling roles, right? We took a holistic view on why we were placing people, and this person was not appropriate for our client base. So my hope was that a potential client would read that and be like, they actually care. So that bad review is a really good example of something positive for the agency.
I think that's great. One of the things we see in our world is that people send out surveys through the Ava platform, and we've created some ways for people to send very targeted surveys to people who fall into specific criteria. So that's if somebody's underutilized and they don't get enough hours, we want to reach out to that person and figure out what their availability is and how many hours they want and all that kind of stuff. If somebody has a new client placement, we know that can either be a really great fit and a reason that we keeps them around for a long time and provides great value to the client. We also know that sometimes it's kind of a mess, and you want to find out about potential issues around client fit, training gaps, personality problems. Is the travel time wrong? And so many times we don't hear about that kind of stuff. And then the person leaves and we don't know why. And one of the things that we've seen be really powerful, but is also a high risk opportunity, is when you get that negative feedback from somebody and understanding if they didn't care, they wouldn't say anything. But I think it can be so easy to just knee jerk. Default reaction is defensiveness, is justifying, is making excuses, especially in a high stress, fast paced business like home care. And so having the ability, and from what I'm hearing you say, is like to explain the why and then to take ownership and offer to make it right is a great way to respond in those kinds of situations.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, the next segment is we talked about a big mistake that you made, but what's a little mistake that you see home care owners making all the time that if they quit, it'd make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better?
I think little mistakes are not listening to the cues that your caregivers are giving you. So you just brought up with Ava, the surveys, right? And one way that not to promote Ava, but like genuinely, like I wish we had Ava when I ran my agency, because there were so many times where a caregiver would quit and we would try to, if it was a good caregiver, try to save them and, understand, well, why? And they're like, well, I'm not getting the hours that I'm looking for. And we would go back and say, but you only were available for weekends or whatever it is. And they're like, no, my availability's changed.
Yeah.
But you didn't tell us that.
Right.
Had we known, we could have done something, different. And I think the little things we could do is check in more with our team.
Yep.
Again, not just checking in, but checking on them. And this is something we took very seriously with my agency, is don't just be checking in on schedules. Check in on them as a person, right? If they're continuously late, maybe there's something like, let's not get mad right away. Let's not get frustrated. It's frustrating, but like, let's find out if there's a reason, right? Maybe the daycare hours change, or they don't have childcare, which we all know in this industry is like number one issue for call-offs, but let's be human. So I think that's where, and I work with agencies all day, every day, and we lose that human factor. We get so burnt out and we get so jaded, but these are still people, and everyone always thinks the key to retention is money. And it's a big part of it, but I truly believe the key to retention is humanizing what we're doing and connecting with our caregivers on a level that they feel supported. And I think that it's small, I think, but actually it's pretty big, but there's small actions you could be doing to help be there for your caregivers more. And I think that agencies just aren't thinking that way a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, like all this stuff it's little things, but they add up. Now, schedule, am I making enough money? Am I getting enough work? That's not a little thing. But all of the other interactions that we have in our work is either a deposit or a withdrawal from the trust, the relationship bank. And we've got to make a lot of deposits. That's hard to do at scale. I was talking to an agency owner, and I thought this was so interesting. She said to me, we waited a really long time to go to direct deposit. And I thought, why would you do that? I want my money like on payday, and I don't want to have to come by the office to get it. And it clicked for me. I was like, oh, the reason you guys did that is because they would come by the office and you would have those little interactions that were pleasant. They could get a cup of coffee, they could get a snack. They had kids, they could bring the kids in. Oh, you're getting so big. All of those little human interactions that I think are so difficult to maintain in a remote work environment. And it was like, wow, a paper check was contributing so positively to workplace culture. And like, you got to do direct deposit. Like it's table stakes. You have to do it. But it was so interesting to hear that as like a retention strategy and a culture building strategy is like a paper check.
Well, and then the flip side too, like we'd have a lot of clients still want to pay by check. So we did a lot of ACH.
Yeah.
And we kind of made that our main form, but a lot of clients still like to drop off their checks.
Yeah.
And it's because that's sometimes their only interaction with people, right? And so can't fault them for that. And I wasn't going to take that away from them.
Right.
But similar, that's how we built part of our relationship with our clientele is they'd come into the office and we could have some nice conversations with them and check in on them on a different level. And that was their highlight of the day. And that gave them an excuse to get out of the house.
Yeah, that's great. Also, this will make it in one of our social shorts. I have a friend here who may or may not have been audible on that last clip because she can't jump without screaming. It's her problem in life.
That's why we should all have dogs.
Well, I have that too. And
well, yeah, mine are upstairs, so they didn't bark and disturb this.
I'm surrounded by animals, Becky. I'm cornered. God.
There's worse things.
I guess so. All right. So we've talked about a lot of mistakes that were made, some things that people should do differently, a lot of good actionable stuff here, but I always like to end on a really high note. And so would love to hear about your win of the week. What's something that's happened lately in your business that you're really proud of?
I think with me, my clients come to me and a lot of times it's we want to increase revenue or we want to streamline our process, or it's a startup agency and, we're getting licensing information sent to the state and building out their process. So it's, I do a lot of that all the time. And so we're looking at metrics and, is there revenue growth and all that great stuff. But I was talking to a client actually yesterday, and this client has been in business for, I think, 20 years, is franchise, really set in their ways. And I love her so much. And her and I joke, and I'm sure she'll listen to this and she'll know who I'm talking about, but she's hard to read sometimes, right? She's very even keel and I never know if I'm doing a good job with her, and I never know and she said yesterday, I was kind of gauging how we were doing, and she's like, I think we're making headway and revenue hasn't increased. So I was like, why do you say that? And she's like, you're getting me out of my comfort zone. And I was like, huh. She's like, normally I wouldn't be thinking about these things. And, we're really trying to do some different marketing tactics and branching out into her community. And she's not one to really do that. And I felt very fulfilled by that comment, that she's feeling more comfortable. She's feeling more empowered to take her agency after 20 years and kind of pivot a little bit. And she's feeling more comfortable doing that. That made me feel really, really good. And so it's not always something that you can measure, right? When, these wins, it's not always quantitative, but in this case, it was really refreshing to know that I'm really making a difference, not only, I think, from the agency standpoint, but to her on a personal level.
Yeah. It's everything's like a bunch of little lead measures that lead up to the lag measure of comfort level leads to different activities, which leads to different results in the community, which leads to more revenue. But without that, that first snowflake coming down in the avalanche, nothing changes. And, I think it's easy to get comfortable in a business after 15, 20 years. Like that's a long time to be doing something. It's easy to be like, we know what works. We know what pays the bills. We know what makes a good income. We don't really want to change anything. And then the ability to get past those plateaus and try new stuff and implement new strategies is really exciting.
Yeah. No, it was really nice to hear, especially because she's not one to give you anything in terms of an emotional, and I was like, good, we're making movement here. So that felt really good. That felt like a win for me for the week.
That's great. Okay, well, we're going to move to our next segment here in a second, which is Home Care Hot Take. But before we do, what would you like to plug?
Besides Ava? No.
You plug Ava all you want. We'll allow it.
I will. Real Home Care Consulting is here for franchises, independents, really anybody who's looking for more support. I built my firm to be a partner in your agency. I built it to be what I wish I had when I was running my agency. So you're not dealing with a big corporation. We're small. We're very involved in your business. Anything, my clients call me and say, what would you do in this situation? Can you help me write a response to this? Because I don't know how to do this. And, I want to bounce this idea off you. And then it's bigger things like strategy and marketing. So I'm here for all your agency needs, anything from operations, marketing, sales, retention, hiring, marketing. I mean, you name it. I ran an agency for 10 years. So I love it. I love what we do. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Awesome. Well, Becky, you're a good LinkedIn follow. And I think you're just Becky Reel on LinkedIn. And then your website's Reel Home Care Consulting.
Yeah. And it's REEL. I got lucky with my married name.
Yeah. Well, we'll put that in the show notes, the website address, not the you got lucky when you got married. And now we're going to go to our last segment, which is Home Care Hot Take. So I'm just going to throw some questions at you and give you the opportunity to get on your soapbox and share with people, the stuff that you want to talk about.
Knowing you, this makes me nervous, but okay.
So the first question, one overlooked channel for referrals is?
The referral sources that no one's talking about. Everyone always thinks senior related. So everyone always thinks hospitals, rehabs, facilities. I think you should be talking to realtors. Who's better to be connected than your community than realtors who's literally talking to people all day long?
That is really, really good.
So I try to think outside the box of stop thinking about senior, start thinking community.
Ooh, that's a good line.
Trademark right there.
Yeah, done. The easiest way to impact turnover is?
Listening to what is being said and also what's not being said and being proactive with that.
That's good. All right. You should define your best fit client because
that is a human being that deserves the best possible care. So you want to be looking at holistically what they need to live a independent life, healthy life.
The thing that I tell almost every one of my clients is,
if you care, if you have good customer service and you're doing this for the right reason, there is no reason why your agency would not be successful. If you are purely doing this for the money, there are a lot of easier ways to make money, but people will see right through that.
All right. This last one is relevant to your experience. If you want to sell your business in the future, the one thing that you should do today is?
Start planning. So don't wait. If you're planning on exiting or selling your agency in 10 years, start planning now. Because when you go to sell, and if you're hypothetically, you're going to work with a brokerage, or however you're going to sell, they're going to want X amount, 3 to 5 years of growth data. They're going to want the time to take your foot off the accelerator is not now. Even when you're going to market, you keep pushing and you keep pushing until that deal closes. But don't wait to start planning your exit strategy until you're ready to exit. Start planning it out 5, 7, even 10 years ahead of time.
Becky, thanks for sitting in the hot seat for a minute there. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a really great time. I think this was a really good conversation. I think people are getting a lot of value from it. But mostly, I'm really happy we're friends, and I'm really happy you chose to come on my podcast.
I'm happy we're friends.
Well, good. Well, thanks again, and make sure that you find Becky on all the places that she is of Instagram and LinkedIn and the internet, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
On behalf of the team here at Zengage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zengage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.